Welcome to the masterclass of How is AI Changing Real Estate Search? Subtitle, Futureproofing Your SEO Strategy. Thank you for joining us. We had a huge number of registrations on this, so I'm absolutely thrilled. It's obviously an important topic. We have Mike Minard here, who is the owner and CEO of Delta Media, Krista Hanna, who is, I believe, VP at MoxiWorks, Nick Villanti, I believe is COO at Reliance. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Laura Smith, I believe you oversee digital marketing at Union Street. I think we're close enough for everybody. So we did do a prep call, and this is a great group, so I'm pretty excited. Let's open up with not to talk down to people in any way, but really just to set the table. What is AI? I know everybody thinks they know, so don't get me wrong. I don't want to waste too much time on this, but I do want to make sure that we're all talking about it in the same way so we don't go left or right. So, Mike, maybe you want to kick us off with a definition of AI, and it'll be interesting. Maybe each of you will give a definition, and we'll see if the definitions are different.
Yeah, so I'll start with my definition. So here's my definition, and I'll clarify it. AI is just software. It is software that has a level of thinking to it within the parameters that it's allowed to think. That's how I'll phrase it.
I like it. Otherwise, Nick, what about you?
AI is it's a software tool that helps you consolidate and find information that is similar to what you're looking for. I guess is the most simplest way that I can think of it.
Okay, so we've got software, and it helps you for what you're looking for. Laura, I'm going to leave you for last. Krista, you're going to bring it home really technically. Go ahead.
Yeah. I tend to agree with Mike and Nick a little bit too. It is a software. It's programmed in order to help you be more efficient. So a lot of people think of it like it's a robot, but it's not. It's just another algorithm, another lines of code that are going to help you be more efficient in your business or in your search.
Okay, Laura.
Yeah, so I agree with everything that's already.
Okay.
Yeah. I agree with everything that's already been said, and I think AI, a lot falls under the AI umbrella. It's kind of in a lot of places within our lives. It's Alexa, it's Siri, it's on our phones, it's the ChatGPTs of the world. But I think in relation to like SEO and search, it's kind of in two spots of that world where it's a bunch of tools that we can use to help optimize our sites, and we can focus on trends more. We can look at data more with those. You can have help writing content with those, but it's also how is AI changing search and how is it on search? And so that's where like ChatGPT comes in, how AI overviews are showing up on our search result pages. And so it's kind of, it's showing up in a lot of spots nowadays.
I do think you're representative of a certain generation that we're all trying to make sure we cater to as life evolves. So I do think that's valid. The other thing, so I think we have a kind of a definition of AI. It's software. It's for efficiency. It's to help us. It's an algorithm. What are the different names of the different tools? There are a lot of different tools that are forced, and let's say AI search tools or assistance tools. They have different names. And I have to tell you, I think it's confusing the name of the tools versus the actual process is AI, but the tools have names. So Laura, I'll start and then go back around. Can you name some of the tools that are out there?
Yeah, I think some of the biggest names in search are ChatGPT. There's Perplexity as well. And then Google has its own Gemini that's showing up. And they're going to be releasing their newest AI mode as well, which is kind of like their answer to the ChatGPTs of the world.
Well, so Gemini is different, just to interrupt, just to be clear. Is Gemini like ChatGPT or not?
I think Gemini is their main name for their umbrella of AI. It's like their open AI version of AI. Whereas AI mode is going to be more of their like ChatGPT. You can ask it questions, you can interact with it, that kind of stuff.
Immediately confusing, right? To me, sorry. I know I'm not the smartest person in the room, but that's immediately confusing to me. It reminds me when we were talking on the prep call about everything going to the cloud, right? And sorry, just old enough to remember, like people going, the cloud, where's the cloud? And the cloud is actually a server. So is AI, Krista, what we do, and it's an algorithm, and the name of the tool might be Gemini or ChatGPT, and then they're branded. Is that the correct way to think about it?
Yeah, that's how I would think about it, right? And I kind of like what Laura was saying, all of these different companies that come out with these AI tools, they have their branding, their marketing name for it, but there's all these different use cases that you can have. So like she was saying, ChatGPT, ask it questions, it gives you answers, right? But then there's, other things like auditing a website, for example, like this topic we're talking about today. There are tools that you can, just click and say, tell me what to do better on this website. And it can actually do a thing for you rather than just scouring the internet for information that answers your question.
And I'll go to Mike next. So Mike, again, such an important differentiator. AI is the general software, but generically speaking, and there are different tools that are branded. And to Krista's point, as we start to hone in on where we're about to go next, they do different things. They're not all search related,
No. And honestly, AI has been around for a long time. It's been around for years. So we've been deep into this since 2017, but we never branded as AI. It's just automated things that do things individualized for individual recipients. It's all AI driven. So it's been around for a long time, especially in the statistical analysis world. So they've had AI engines that they've used for testing and for projections that they do with statistical analysis. If you look at AI in general, we're heavy in the Anthropic world with Claude for software development. So, and this might kind of be a shock, I won't hire anyone unless they're fully familiar with AI tools for software development and for SEO and for content creation. So we've been deep in the AI side for well over a year here. But so different tools have different, different uses. So I use Grok mostly as a replacement for Google stuff I would search. I really don't Google anything hardly anymore. But each tool, here's where it gets confusing, is each tool has its own unique thing that it's good at, and it could all change tomorrow with a new release.
By the way, feel free to live stream and chat and ask questions. We'll get to them if we can slide them in. Otherwise, I'll do them at the end. Nick, what the hell is Grok? I'm sorry, I have no idea, and I'm hoping there are a few other people in the audience that don't know what Grok is either. And by the way, I do not run marketing at Local Logic, so nobody be afraid.
Well, Grok gets into helping you answer the questions, but I think it goes, each AI proponent or each one that has its own special expertise is really comes down to their model and where the model has really honed in on its information. And so at the end of the day, when we're really talking about AI language learning models and where they're getting their model, where they're getting in their information, that's why Claude is really good at coding, because all their models are really, really heavy focused around coding. Those companies have been able to really focus and make sure that their modeling and their data set that they're pulling from is really hyper focused around that information. And that's why you have different AI companies good at different things. And that's why there may be a shift where maybe Grok in a year is going to be really good at coding because they spent the last year really honing in and improving their models to read code. But a lot of it is coming down to finding consistencies, finding where people are leaning towards information, and those language learning models are going to find those consistencies. That's why we see Gemini in our text messaging and in Google, because it has a very big data set to work with to be like, oh, this is a normal response to this type of text or this type of email, and is able to give those recommendations because the modeling that it has access to and leverage from can find those consistencies and then provide those similar recommendations.
Okay, cool. Good. Well, let's take the next phase into the conversation. I was going to talk about just websites in general, but I don't want people to, I know they've joined for real estate specifically. So let's talk about real estate websites. Okay, so let's talk about, I will tell you, I told the group this and I did it again just right before. I did an AI search of like, hey, where do I look for homes in Bethesda, Maryland, which is near me? And I was like, it was the experience on mobile was very different than the experience on desktop, Laura. And on mobile, it was clearly I got an AI answer, and the response on my desktop was like 5 sponsored things. It was really fascinating to me. So I'm going to set that aside about mobile versus desktop. But the experience using AI for real estate, Laura, again, I'll point to your generation a bit. I don't know if we hadn't been doing this class, I would have searched that way. But I think the younger generation is going to search that way. Do you think they may or may not immediately go to Zillow? I think they all know Zillow, but they might be more inclined to be more open and maybe a little less brand loyal in a way, right? So I think it's an interesting question. What is your thoughts on that? And what are you finding in your research?
Yeah, So
Broad
I don't know.
question, I know, sorry.
Well, sorry, what was that?
It's a broad question, I know.
Yeah, so I was curious about this myself because in my personal life, I actually don't use a lot of AI for my search. And so I was curious. I was like, well, am I an outlier? And I reached out to a lot of my friends before this, and and maybe it's just my group of friends, but it was very much a mix. We found a lot of like people are still using Google and they're still using search engines to access certain things, but for the more informational side of things, and the informational like queries that people are asking, that's where they were using ChatGPT. And that's where I'm seeing too in my research is that a lot of people are using ChatGPT and those types of platforms to answer more deep questions, like more informational asks, like why if you do this what would happen versus exactly like homes for sale. So yeah, it's really interesting. I don't know what the 25 and under subgroup exactly is doing. I have heard that a lot of them use ChatGPT nowadays and they've grown up with it more because it's been around. In my friend groups that are in the upper 20s, early 30s, like it definitely still seems to be quite a mix. And in my research too, I've seen that it's Google still holds a majority of the searches, but the AI is not going anywhere and it's probably just going to continue to grow. So it's definitely an area that we need to put our focus
And I did
towards
some
and
research
adapt
on
to.
that also. So people basically, and then I'll go to you, Krista. Traditional search engines serve four, just so we're clear for the audience: navigational, finding specific sites; informational, learning, right? So we're clear when we use these terms because they're commonplace for marketing people, but not necessarily the rest of us. Commercial, which is researching products, interesting, or transactional, making purchase. And they said, so the quote that I have is, ChatGPT is breaking the mold. Only 30% of ChatGPT prompts in the dataset could be identified in these traditional categories. Yeah, so maybe whoever wants to jump in, actually, Mike, if you want to jump in on this, or Krista, and then Krista, you can go after either one.
Yeah, I think you're citing research from Rand. He was was the founder of SEMrush. He just released a great article last month on in March. And yeah, you have to keep in mind how many of us pay attention to DuckDuckGo for SEO results, and that's 3 times ChatGPT still. So that puts it in perspective. Google still owns 99, well, it depends on how you look at it. Roughly 98% of the market is owned by traditional search still. And the other thing I would point out is, according to Google's own numbers, they grew by nearly 22% last year in the search. So search is still big, and we're still wrapping our heads around the implications of AI. I will say this, like what you cited, Audrey, as far as people looking, and when someone's looking to relocate to another market, we are starting to see where people are doing deep research as opposed to just a Google search for something. And that's where AI really does come in. And I think the thing is, most normal people, so what Laura mentioned about like her group of friends, that's the same as my group of friends. And even my wife, as deep as I am into AI, my wife never used it till a few months ago, and I introduced her to Grok. She uses it for recipes for dinners and loves it. So you
Yeah,
can
so
do.
maybe it's not generational, to your point.
No.
Krista, what's your thought on that?
Yeah, I have a little perspective of even younger generations. My son's 13 and they use laptops at school, right? And they have AI enabled tools on those
Don't
laptops.
go down the educational rabbit hole.
Yeah, it's the same thing, right? So transactional, Google is very transactional. I'm looking for a restaurant. I want to find a link that I can click to get to a new website. Whereas a chat GPT or something along those lines is going to be, I need more information about something and I want it all summarized really nicely and buttoned up for me. And so if I can't find the answer that I'm looking for on Google, then I'll go to chat GPT and be like, okay, so just tell me what this is. If you're clicking around too much from these Google links. So I think where real estate gets a really good edge on this is that there's not a lot of opinion. Either the house is a house or it's not, right? It's either for sale or it's not. And the content is always going to be unique. And so you have that edge if somebody really does Google, I'm looking for a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house in Seattle, you're going to get actual links to the home, right? You're not going to get this overview explanation. What is the house, right? So I think we get an edge on that in this industry as far as how SEO is impacted by the AI. Those overviews are useless. The 0-click content, they're useless for people looking for a home.
Okay, perfect. And I think we teed you up so nicely, Nick. because I was going to say, at some point, I really want to utter the words trash in, trash out. Because I've been saying about AI for like 5 years. I'm like, don't get me wrong, I get it. But Nick, can you talk about the impact of it being real estate?
Yeah, I mean, so the way that I like to help people with AI is like you're stuck with an idea. And the idea is, what do I make for dinner? Or I need to do meal planning, or I need a workout schedule for the week, or I know I'm relocating to Seattle. Where should I live? And so if you can help write the content or produce the content where AI is going to look at it and say, these are the top 5 places to live, AI is going to summarize that and then give you some of the assets to kind of do it. It's like, I need a meal for tonight and this is what I have. Or I need to move to Seattle and I'm going to be working at XYZ company at Boeing or whatever. Where are the places that I should live in order to have great schools, great commute time? Wink, wink, Seattle, that's not happening. But where you have a broad idea, AI is going to help you kind of narrow in that focus and give you the top things to look at or the top things to do. It's a great idea generator to get you started, but especially when it comes to real estate, it can be a great idea generator. What neighborhoods you should be looking at, why you should be looking at those neighborhoods. But at the end of the day, going to dive you into the real estate to find what are the actual listings available. But rather than looking for Seattle, I'm now looking for market X, market Y, market Z in order to kind of narrow me down into there. So
Well, I
that's
feel
huge.
I feel like you just did a really nice thing for me, which teed up Local Logic, which of course is a neighborhood expert and provides unique content, blah, blah, blah. There's my little show moment. The nice thing about Local Logic is we do work with everybody on the call, so you can take advantage. And the nice thing about all of you is that you're all very in tune with local content and neighborhoods and stuff. So all of you do that really, really well. Now, I've done that moment. Let's say keywords. I'm going to go back around again. We'll just keep going around. Laura, keywords. So to Nick's point, like this dovetails into, what do keywords matter anymore? They matter more.
Yeah, I don't think keywords are dead. I think they're still very important to focus on and to know what people are searching for, both in search engines and in AI. I think they are just not maybe word for word like they've been in the past. So it's not like you don't need an exact keyword match anymore, because the algorithms of search engines and AI are able to get a better overall intent of what your content is about. So I think they're so important that you have them on there to get the initial search engines to crawl that content, but I don't think you don't need a exact match anymore, which is how it used to be. So it's just another thing that is adapting in the SEO world, which we're all very used to. I want to point to what AI is presenting for people. I think it's an opportunity for more brand awareness. People are going to be asking those informational questions of what neighborhoods should we live in, and get these summaries popped out. But I think if you're able to get your content or be seen as a source or citation for those, then it's a brand awareness. So when people are further down the line and are doing those more transactional keywords where it's like homes for sale and blank, if you're ranking for those, they'll see your name and maybe recognize it from AI already. That was in the earlier stages of their journey. So definitely wanted to throw that in there too. I think it's going to be more of like a brand awareness tool versus a traffic driving organic tool.
Well, and I think that it's interesting. I'm reading the chats off to the right. I do think it's interesting which brands are taking advantage of that, Krista, like are moving more quickly. Look, you serve some major brands. You guys do, all of you do to some degree, so everybody does. But when you find with this, I do think how are the brands finding that line between like customizing it to their brand, to Laura's point, and making sure they meet the the technology needs?
Yeah, it's interesting. I had a conversation last week with one of our larger customers about this, just kind of getting a feel for how they see this impact in the industry. For them, they really are just kind of like what Laura said, like the keywords still are important, but really just the content. So having fresh, reliable content that's human first, making sure that the percentage of AI used to produce that content is on the lower half. So I think they said something like 60% of their content is human produced, and the other 40 they use AI to help produce it. And having like local pages, things like Local Logic, neighborhood pages on their website with lots of information about the area. So like what Nick was saying, you don't know where you want to live, but you know you're going to work at Boeing, and that's in Everett, for example, but you don't really want, I don't know if anyone on this call is from this area also. You do not want to live in Everett, most likely. You can get the intent of the person searching and figure out these areas are close, and then you'll actually have real information about the area. So I do like Laura's comment about the brand awareness too. So having pages like that on your website that have a lot of important information that people would be interested in is going to help drive those results back to your branded page.
Well, maybe that answers Tannis's question on the chat, Mike, and then I'll go to Nick, and you can both answer it. And I do think it's a great question because I wondered it when I played with it myself. How do you become a trusted source in AI land?
That's in our world for the customers that we engage on the SEO side. We have seen that the SEO strategy has gone back to more of a marketing strategy from what we would say was the 70s. So yes, you still have to do the traditional SEO stuff, the content, things like that, but press releases are becoming important again. And content on third-party sites or on third-party sites is becoming important again. And Audrey, you know this, I'm not plugging you guys, but that's why I was so bullish on Local Logic content on property detail pages, because we're looking for more of a traditional marketing ecosystem now. And AI does pick up on that. If you query AI and say, hey, what website should I use if I'm trying to find a home in Naples, Florida? And in order to get your sites to show up, you do have to be engaged in these other things. The other thing I would say, though, too, is I am telling you, people do not understand AI. You would think that senior level software developers understand AI. They don't unless they're deeply in the world of AI and truly use it to do work, because I've seen it firsthand over the past couple years. So when we have people on here that don't really understand it, where's it going? Because we're seeing software release that makes no sense, because one of the questions was, what about how you talk to AI and how up to date is it? There's an art to how you query AI and how you engage with it, which is why I'm not very bullish on AI tools that are what I call cookie cutter, where anyone in that marketplace can use the same tool, because then you're all in the same. And it goes back to AI context, which I don't want to get too in the weeds here, but you can have a context as your own brand, and AI responds and acts differently. So there's a lot to it. And if you know how to use it, and really, when I say that, it's all by starting to just use it. I would say Grok is the most up to date as far as content goes. It's up to date as of today, and it will search live. And as Nick even said, Claude is from Anthropic is very good for coding, but it's not as up to date unless you give it context to keep it up to date.
Okay, so Nick, I think you have a lot to say on this. I do too, but I'm gonna let you go first.
So to go back on the original question of, are keywords still important? And I think we all are collectively in agreement, keywords are still important. It's just in the matter of context. AI is definitely looking at a lot more long tail keyword because it's trying to help answer an overall question or theme of what they're trying to do. And so you can leverage content that you already have and internal referral links from the listing detail back to neighborhoods. You could do the same thing with blogging. You can do the same thing with external articles. It's internal linking, it's external cross-reference linking that provides authority as long as you continue to have things like time on site. If you continue to be answers to question for Gemini and Google, Google's going to continue to go back to you as an authority of those answers. It's the same answers of how you are the author or gaining authority. It's just slightly different now in the sense of how that content is being produced. Now, I think a lot of people are going to ask, and it hasn't been asked yet, is which keywords do I target for? You have all the same tools, similar tools that you had before between SEMrush, between trends.google. There's all those same tools out there of what people are searching for to help get those answers. It's just some of those times the answers are going to be produced in SERP and in AI instead of a page call, and you'll be referenced as the author of that answer. So you still have the same tools. You just have to think of them a little bit differently in long term, and you can still leverage the content that you already have that's unique to you in another form with blog, with internal linking and cross linking. So you have those tools. You don't have to start from scratch.
I know, to be honest, I listen to you guys and it sounds to me like it's a new way to do it, but it's all relying on the same base information, So like it's all basically like reflecting back. It's really a piece of software that is in essence trying to decide what is the best information to give you. So it has a million different, it's trying to decide what you want to eat. It has a lot of foods to choose from. It might have a sense of your allergies. I love a good analogy, but generally it's trying to decide what to serve you up. And it's trying to give you stuff that's fresh. It knows you may have eaten before, engagement, right? Things like that. Something I learned recently, and then I'll move on, is right before this class, I learned that you can have the setting of ChatGPT on or off. And I was arguing about it with one of our marketing people, that ChatGPT model, it has a little thing that says on, then it will also search the web. If it's off, then it is only searching for the last time the algorithm and the model was updated. So my argument was, why in the world would you have it off when you would always want more current information? But this person said, well, you want the model also not to be ineffective. I don't know if distracted is the right word, but it performs better. So I thought that was a really interesting question. This reminds me a little bit of Zestimates. We love our friends at Zillow, but if you don't really know the algorithm, you don't really know what's factoring in, you really don't necessarily know where to go. And I'm not sure the consumer knows which one to choose. But we'll get better at it. That's for sure. So, Laura, question for you. Thank you for letting me pontificate. I want to go around because we did talk about this in the prep call and it was interesting. What are the most common questions that you're getting from your customers or prospects with regard to AI that would be helpful to everybody to clear up? And then I'll go to some of the questions in the chat as well.
Yeah, well, I think this actually relates to one of the questions that was asked, I saw. But one of the most questions we get is, how can we show up in these AI responses, in the AI overview, in the outputs of ChatGPT and the other chat bots there? And I think a lot of the overall SEO strategies that we have will help you get seen in those, because with AI, it's always hard to tell exactly where it's getting all of its information. But we have seen some results where if you're in the top 10, then you're likely, or ranking in the top 10, you likely will be one of the cited sources. But we're also seeing AI focuses a lot on where your location is too. And so a lot of local smaller websites have been able to wiggle their way into as sources I've been seeing. I think it gives an opportunity for those that maybe have been pushed down to page 2 because search pages are getting so busy nowadays to be seen as sources there. But some of the things that I've seen of ways that you can try to get your content shown in these results is kind of like what everybody's been saying, just making sure it's super high quality content, similar with the EEAT, which is expertise, experience, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. So if you're producing content that is valuable, it's a really good resource, it's what people are searching for, and you've proven that you're an expert in that area, then you can definitely get help with ranking that content. But there's also some smaller things too that I think you can do, where you can go back to old content, refresh it, make sure it's still relevant, but maybe you can format it a little differently, like put in, if there's an opportunity, instead of a big block of text, put in bullet points or a numbered list. And sometimes AI likes to pull that in more often than not. There's also, I saw somebody had asked a question about answering questions, and I think frequently asked question pages are huge too, and they will be pulling in responses to those. And so I always like to say too, like if you're hearing a lot of questions and you have clients that are asking you the same questions, that's what you should be writing about, and that's what you should be putting on your site. And people likely are also reaching out to search engines and ChatGPT asking these same questions. And so there's more of a chance that you could be pulled in as a source.
So
Maybe cited.
Pay attention. The summary of that is pay attention.
Yeah.
And also make sure that I'm a big believer in engagement, like more time people click and spend on site. Krista, your thoughts on most common questions that you get?
Yeah, I mean, we get similar questions that as Laura was saying.
You can say the same ones even if they're asked differently.
Yeah, a lot of it is just like, how can I leverage AI to help me with my website or my CRM or whatever the product is? And a lot of the answers that we give have to do with like how not to use AI. You don't want to use AI to try to game the search system, right? Because Google knows what you're doing. Just like keywords, back in the days when you would have like just a random page on your website with just words all over it. It's like they know what you're doing, and you're not going to be able to game the system, and you'll get, unranked. But yeah, a lot of the questions are really more about like tools. So asking us, are you guys going to develop something that's going to help me build my website without me doing as much work? I think a lot of what we talked about today is just evidence of, AI is not going to take away the human input that's necessary. You still have to do something. So you can't just click a button and boom, you have the top ranked website, or you still have to do something about it.
I think that's behooves everybody on this call and is also true. So Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, so I would add a few things to this. I think in addition to these things, we're getting a lot of questions around website content, but I'll get into that in creating content, but listing description, lead responses, and leveraging AI to do that. But here's what people don't consider. What they don't think about is AI can be really powerful if you leverage it properly. So if you're getting a listing in a marketplace and as a competent realtor that it's going to compete with these 25 active listings right now, the best thing to do is to give an AI tool, hey, here's the description for 25 listings that are similar to this one. Write me a description that positions this home better than the others in the description. So it goes back to positioning. And so it's not just about doing a task, because I am a big proponent of we call it the HIM approach, human in the middle. AI is not at a point to where it could replace any programmer. It's not at the point to where it could replace a realtor by any means. I would even argue that in the wrong hands, it's very dangerous because it does make mistakes. And I'll just give you one example. So we used to employ over 200 writers across the country for content that we would do for our customers. We no longer employ them. We use AI tools to write articles, and we've been doing it for over a year. But with that said, and you got to do your research, because AI had written an article for us about an area and some of the key things to see in that area, and it highlighted like a local animal that they had there that was well known. I forget the town, but here that animal had died over 2 years previously. So could you imagine letting AI write that article, you publish it, and then someone that knows the market there says, oh my goodness, you guys, you just wrote an article about our beloved pet that died 30 months ago. So it's all in the prompting. But I'll add one last thing here. What people don't realize is the people that understand AI, like here, you could go ask AI right now, you could go ask Grok, think of your top competitor or your two top competitors in the marketplace, and go ask Grok what their go-to-market strategy is in your market, and it will tell you. And then go ask it, okay, if I want to compete against them and take market share, what would you suggest for my go-to-market strategy, just from a marketing perspective? And it's shocking what it can come back with. So it's really out of the box type things that we're starting to see.
Michael's example of what is my top two competitors doing and what can I do? That's not an article you're going to copy and paste and post online, but that's giving you a ton of information that you're not going to get from a straight Google search. So it's been able to consolidate, summarize, and give you a great information, which you can be leveraging. Now, questions that we get is, hey, can AI, bring me to page one, just as Krista said? We guide and try to put guardrails and protections around that. It's like, you need to have human intervention. If you want it to rank, it can get you started. It can get you a lot of great ideas, but you need to have human intervention to make sure, one, that it's accurate, one, that it's in your words, and that you're adding to it. There are times where AI has fair housing issues when writing listing descriptions, or when you're writing about neighborhoods and community information. And while we can ensure that there are prompts that says that the AI needs to take in fair housing as a part of that consideration, it's not perfect. And so while we have tools, we all have tools to help rewrite listing descriptions, to write out emails for a lead, or to write out a blog post or a social post, a neighborhood or a community page. It all needs to have some sort of review and audit before it goes out. It's a great idea starter. And that's what we try and train and educate. We have the tools. We can help you start the idea. It'll help you get writer's block out of the way, but you need to double check it. Like Oswego, Oregon, writing a community page for it, it's going to say it's great for first-time homebuyers. It's not.
Can't afford it.
It is not. So you need to check it, make sure that it is accurate, and making sure that it's writing the right information to get things going.
Last question, and then we'll wrap it up. What about fair housing and ethical concerns? Huge issue for housing, huge. Well, a lot of industries really, but housing in particular, really, really tricky. And what's interesting too, and I'll add one more thing, is that the different states have different laws. Like New York is tricky about what it'll say differently than the rest of the country. And the agents and the brokers in those localized communities are very careful. So Nick, I'm going to let you continue, and then we'll go back around.
Yeah, I mean, fair housing and local considerations, and those are the biggest issues. In ChatGPT, well, you can use the live version, and it's using a lot of data that's old and using that as common things. When you're looking for top things to do in an area, that's probably how the article got written about the animal that passed away, because it was probably in a ton of different blogs as one of the top 10 things to do or top 10 things to see in a given area. But it has no context to recent events, and it doesn't take that into consideration because the model is saying what are the common things that it's seeing as part of its trend. And so that's what it's going to do, and why we run into fair housing issues is because we'll have a blog or articles about why it's great to live in a certain area, but it may have fair housing issues for transportation or walkability or something to some sort of effect that gets into fair housing issues. So we can't promise with AI to protect against the wrong language being used for fair housing, or that it's going to follow New York policies or things like that. But we can warn and guide and have key things that it sticks out for. We can ensure that prompts are including these things to look out for or to take out of to give it additional context. But those are things that we have to warn every single time people are leveraging AI to produce content in either for an email or for listing descriptions or for a blog post, whatever it may be. We can warn and guide and flag, but we can't guarantee. And that's what's going to be across the board for AI.
Mike, how do you, if you fired all your writers, so to speak, how do you make sure the human part is in that equation? How do website providers account for that? Like, how do you tackle that?
We already have staff that do that. And what people don't realize still, that even still writing content, we do not believe that any single AI tool is good at writing an article. So when we leverage AI to write articles, we are utilizing multiple AI engines to do different things on the same article. Otherwise, it will test as written by AI. So we're shooting for 95% plus likelihood as a human written article, and we achieve that. So there's a lot to it, but there's also SEO components that you're going for as well. And I don't want to get too in the weeds with that, but there definitely has to be a strategy to it and a human element. The other thing I would point out too, it is very important to license enterprise versions of AI engines, because if you do not, your information is being used, and anything you put in there is being used. I license enterprise versions of all these tools where contractually I'm guaranteed that anything I put in there is sandboxed just for me, and I can delete it at any time.
So
So
anybody who Googles your business plan, it's wrong.
right, yeah, it's not out there.
Don't do it.
My competitors are. So these things are real concerns. And I know somebody put out there, what about the ethical? There are real concerns here. Like anything that's powerful in the wrong hands, it could do some really nefarious things. And we've seen that already with AI. But I think what people have to understand is you can just do some really neat things with it. Just understand what you're doing with it and understand and just start using it.
Krista, that really is interesting about the license. And then, of course, it leads me to feel like, well, if everybody buys the professional license, which I would too, Mike, then what's left? What's your thoughts on all of this?
Yeah, that is a kind of a conundrum, right? It's like you want to protect it, but then anybody else using it is missing out on potential helpful, useful information. And then then you might get trapped too as an employee. Say if you're one of Mike's employees, and then you're used to using that version, so you use it for your personal stuff too, and then you realize like, oh, now I don't have the same experience I would have had if I was using my own version of this
Right.
for non-work related items.
It kills that whole concept that this is for everybody and we're all going to benefit.
So, and I think too, what Nick was touching on is that a lot of this information that you're getting out of AI is based on how often it already shows up on the internet. And so you're going to get a lot of incorrect stuff from bad news articles, fake news, right? Are we still saying that? So you're going to get a lot of garbage out of it that may have been true 10 years ago, but isn't today. And that's still why it's so important. Back to my 13-year-old son, always check your work, right? So whatever you get produced out of your AI tool, whatever it is you're using, read it as if you were the consumer that's going to read it before you put it anywhere, right?
That was like Wikipedia from my generation. And the problem is most people didn't realize that Wikipedia was content generated by not AI, but humans. And so it wasn't validated. So I think that's a great point.
Yeah, and I think too, real quick, I just want to touch on when part of Jess's question there was about algorithmic bias, and that's really important. We kind of started the conversation about that. All of these different platforms, different developers are making them, different companies who have different positions on policies and politics and in the environment. And so you're going to get a different answer from each AI platform just based on bias, because there's always going to be bias.
Okay, so Laura and Jay is putting in some good stuff for people who want to read that later. But Laura, I do want to touch on the copyright one just for you, if you don't mind. I do think that this did come up in some of the articles I read, and I don't want to put you on the spot if you don't know a lot about that's okay with you. But I do think that it's interesting about the copyright issues of data too, and how that factors in. I know I'm throwing you a curveball, so please feel free to defer. But have you come across that at all, and some of those issues? Because I do think that's really relevant as well.
Yeah, I don't know how much I'll be able to touch on this, but I do know that it's a hot topic of should you label if it's AI or not. I find it specifically coming up a lot in imagery and videos, but I think that definitely can come up when you're writing content. I know that a lot of times the way that I use it is I use it as a way so you don't start with a blank page. That's kind of how I talk about it. And so it's a good, like Nick had said, it's a good idea generator. It gets you started, but I don't recommend fully just copying and pasting and putting it on a site, because there is going to be a lot of issues. So it should have that human touch, and you should make it unique in your own, but you can definitely use it as a tool to get you started. Because I found specifically with COVID and everything, a lot of content it reads is pre-COVID. And I find like for community pages and stuff, it'll recommend a ton of businesses that have all closed, mostly because of COVID. And so it's you just always have to double check it. You have to fact check it. You have to make sure it's in the tone and the voice that you're looking for, and make it your own, instead of just copying and pasting it onto the site.
And people are going to get better at it. So we'll summarize. People are going to start to know what it means, like the clouds. I know a lot more about it once it came out, and which server I wanted, which cloud service I wanted to use, and what are the pros and cons. So we are going to get more knowledgeable about what it is, what the proper tools, Grok versus this or that, right? Their strengths and weaknesses. We're going to hopefully start to look at when they were last updated and become a little more aware that not all LLMs are created equal, right? And I do think, and I'll bring this full circle and then we'll conclude. At what point does AI not embolden agents? Again, if a consumer cannot properly discern, do they not? I'll tell you a little funny story. When Zestimates first came out, I used to present about AVMs to large audiences of agents, and they're like, "You're disenfranchising us." And I was like, "Actually, it's quite the opposite." I'm like, "It's a little number. It doesn't actually explain why the value is that way. It is math in, math out, and it's reasonably accurate. It's no problem, but it doesn't tell you what the schools are. I know whether agents can comment on schools. Please don't go down that rabbit hole. But the schools, the traffic, the noise, you're the expert that explains the number. Nothing else explains the number. And I do think we're going to come full circle back to agents saying, like, if a consumer is concerned that it's AI generated, is this valid? So do you guys feel that we are coming back around to emboldening our friends in the industry, our agents, our home inspectors, appraisers, loan officers, in essence, brokers, franchises, or not really?
Yeah, I think so. And I think I don't want anyone on this call to get scared, because now it sounds like you're going to have to work even harder than thinking that AI was going to make your job easier. And now you have to do all this other stuff to make sure you're using it correctly. But, this industry, unlike many other industries, will always need people. That's the whole point of the industry, is relationships. And I'm not going to buy my house from a computer. I need to see it. I need someone to show me and talk to me about it and about the area. So I wouldn't be worried at all. But you do have to work.
Any other quick 1 minute takeaways? I thought that we can end on that, because I think that's extremely well said.
I'll just say this. I'm a
Go
firm
for it.
believer that the top realtors will embrace it and do a heck of a lot more business. It's just going to widen the gap, I think. That's how I see it.
Nick, you see that too? Just another tool to widen the gap.
It's not going to replace the agent, just like the AI is not going to replace the listing detail page. You need the expert to handle the process. You need the listing detail page for them to be able to see the photos and all the unique details about the property. AI is going to help you speed up the process. It's going to help you move faster, do more with less time, but it's not going to replace the agent. It's not going to replace the individual display page at all.
And generationally, Laura, you don't think people expect that, do you?
Not with my generation, at least. I'm not seeing it.
But I think you're right. I always used to say this final thought as a loan officer. But when I was a loan officer, I was actually a loan officer way back when. And it was when automated loans were coming on in approval. And they're like, oh, you're going to put loan officers out of business. And I always said that as long as you need somebody to blame, whether it's to get your loan or your house, as long as you have somebody to blame, because it's the largest transaction and the largest amount of money most of us will ever move, you're going to need a human. Thank you, guys. Thank you. I thought that's a great conversation. I know a bunch of people are going to listen to it on video later. So find any and all of us if you have any questions afterwards. Thanks again. Happy April Fool's Day. See you guys.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. See you.
Bye-bye.